Welcome to the American Idiots Podcast, the show where we take the hottest topics currently dividing our country and we debate them with our diverse group of hosts. So sit back and strap in, as for the next 2 hours we leave no story undebated and no politician will be spared. It's the American Idiots Podcast live on Podcast Network 49, and it begins right now. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back into the American Idiots. I am Money Mike. I'm going to be joined pretty quickly here by the manic Hispanic, but of course, definitely want to be saying that we're glad you're back. We're glad to be back on the air after 2-week hiatus, Labor Day and everything running amok, so to speak, in the schedule, but definitely glad to be back and talking a little bit of politics here tonight. Quite a bit of Trump on the agenda tonight, as a matter of fact. And, of course, we're going to talk about 9/11, the events. Donald Trump actually absent from the memorial events, the traditional memorial events that ex-presidents and the current administration attend each year. So we're going to get into that. But real quick, if you would, if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to give us a like or subscribe on YouTube. Hit the notification bell as well on YouTube so you'll be notified anytime we post. Same vice versa if you would. And, of course, go to iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all those good audio-only spots, and leave us a 5-star review and subscribe to us as well. But with that being said, a very busy Manic Hispanic. Manny Hispanic, how you doing today?
Doing good, man. 12 hours put in today doing electric up here in northwest Arkansas. It seems to be typical for the end of any job.
You know, it's going to be interesting. One thing I'm going to be interested in is seeing how your profession specifically changes here over the next few weeks. With the end of the unemployment benefits, them running out, and President Biden choosing not to extend them. Neither the state governments as well chose to extend them. It's going to be interesting to see how the unemployment numbers are going to look over the next few weeks and months here.
Yeah, especially since you've got a lot of places that have gone automated.
Absolutely. I mean, hell, nowadays you can't walk into McDonald's without an automated teller, pretty much.
Right.
But that actually leads us into our first topic. Joe Biden has actually kind of shot himself in the foot for this potential upswing in unemployment numbers, announcing a vaccine mandate encompassing 100 million Americans. And we have a story from NBC News on this.
With COVID cases surging and deaths now 5 times higher than just a month ago, President Biden is requiring tens of millions more Americans to get vaccinated.
We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost all of us. This is not about freedom or personal choice. It's about protecting yourself and those around you.
The president is ordering nearly all federal workers and employees of contractors that do business with the federal government get vaccinated within 75 days, eliminating their option to be tested instead of getting shots. Employees who refuse could be punished, even fired.
If you want to work with the federal government and do business with us, get vaccinated.
While initially reluctant to issue mandates, the president's aggressive new plan requires vaccinations for 17 million healthcare workers at hospitals and other sites that receive Medicare or Medicaid funding. President Biden's now pressuring private companies too, directing the Labor Department to require businesses with 100 or more employees ensure their workers are fully vaccinated or provide a negative test each week, a move the White House estimates will impact 80 million Americans. Companies that do not comply could face fines, the White House anticipating lawsuits.
We're going to protect vaccinated workers from unvaccinated coworkers.
All of it as approval of the president's handling of the virus has dropped since he expressed confidence about the pandemic 2 months ago.
Today, we're closer than ever to declaring our independence from a deadly virus.
The president tonight.
We're in the tough stretch, and it could last for a while.
And the TSA is doubling fines for airline passengers who refuse to mask up.
If you break the rules, be prepared to pay. And by the way, show some respect.
And Peter, the White House wants to make at-home testing more widely available. How do they plan to do it?
Yeah, Lester, that's right. President Biden tonight announcing the federal government is teaming up with Walmart, Amazon, and Kroger to sell at-home rapid tests at a cheaper price beginning this week.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel.
So, of course, that from NBC News on the story. So I look at this in three parts. There were three major things that came in, and I want to address them each by each part. So let's start off with the federal mandate for federal workers. If you want to do business with the federal government, Joe says get vaccinated. Here's my thing. I don't mind the mandate. I mind the fact that you can't test out. If you're testing negative, then I don't see the big deal. That's where I am on that. Manny, where are you as far as the federal part of this?
Well, in all honesty, mine is all wrapped up.
Okay.
So if you want to give your other points and I'll give mine at the end, it's up to you. If you want me to give my point 3 damn times, I will.
Well, then there's the middle. There's the middle one that they were talking about with the social or healthcare workers. I do believe, again, that is a situation. I think that's a special situation. You're dealing with these people every day. You are at a very extremely high risk. More high risk than myself, more high risk than you, Manny. I can see the mandate there. Now, moving on to the third part, encompassing over 100 million Americans, and any employer that has over 100 employees requiring either a negative test each week or a COVID vaccine. I think that's a very, very overreaching of the federal government, and at least that piece, you already are seeing state governments fighting back against this. I believe one of them has already filed suit. I forget which one. I don't believe it was Arkansas.
It wasn't Arkansas.
But I do believe that there are already suits pending on this. I don't expect that section to get very far. I even sent you a message though when it first happened. I was like, "Checkmate. Looks like it's going to have to happen."
And I believe I sent you the fact that somebody was suing, saying it wasn't checkmate, it was just check.
Yeah, that may have been where I saw it. Yeah, but I mean, 3 big moves. Where are you on it?
Where am I on it? Number one, they are still not giving us numbers for recovery.
Okay.
So I'm trying to think what the numbers were the last time we were on. It seems like there was an upsurge in Arkansas that we're talking about because schools were just starting.
Schools.
We had so much stuff going on, but I haven't seen a large increase in the number of deaths.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that more people are recovering than are dying from it.
Let's see here. I think we added 33 today or yesterday. I haven't seen today's numbers. Quickly, I'll look at it. We added 35 today and 1,116 new cases today. Okay.
It since in the past, let's say 2 months or even month, because we were on, 2 weeks ago. So in the last month, how many deaths have there been?
Let me see if I can get that actual. If it will actually break it down like that for me. Arkansas all time, 30 days. Here we go. So are we looking for deaths or cases?
Deaths.
Deaths, 35, 33, 30, 34. We're ranging between the teens and the 30s.
Yet we have hundreds as far as new cases.
Thousands.
Okay, thousands as far as new cases.
Yeah.
But we only have in the teens as far as deaths. That tells me more people are recovering than are dying from this.
Right.
So why are they mandating a vaccine for something that you're more likely to recover from than die from? That's number one. Number two, he hit the nail on the head whenever he said this isn't about freedom or personal choice. They are taking our freedoms from us.
Okay. I've seen the opposite. I actually saw a Facebook post about it. It's interesting you bring that up. I saw a Facebook post about that earlier today, and it said, taking away your freedoms is taking away something you can't control. You can't control what color your skin is. You can't control, certain things, your socioeconomic status, yada, yada, yada. Whereas you can control your ability to go out and get this vaccine. What do you say to that?
I don't understand the way you just worded that.
Well, what they're saying is taking away your freedoms is taking away your things based on things like race, color, race, socioeconomic status, religious preference, things like that.
No, that isn't your freedoms. Those aren't your freedoms. That has nothing to do with freedoms. Your ethnicity, your race, any of that, none of that stuff has to do with freedom.
What the post said is taking away your freedoms are taking away things based upon those major categories. Whereas taking away something or forcing you to go get a vaccine that is proven to not prevent you from getting COVID, but at least lessen the symptoms is not taking away your freedoms.
Right, but I shouldn't be forced to do anything.
Okay. Are you across the board on that? What do you think about the whole idea of the testing? What do you think about that, requiring the test? And when I read that, I thought back. It reminds me a lot of the NFL's policy. And it's kind of weird if Joe got this from the NFL in major sports, because that's pretty much what they did is, hey, either you're going to get vaccinated, we're going to fine you, or we're going to require a negative test each week. If you don't meet one of those, we'll fine you. Now it's going to be an OSHA situation where if you don't give a negative test or you don't get vaccinated, OSHA can come in and fine the company you work for. What's your thoughts on testing out rather than getting the vaccine?
Testing out is a great deal. I just don't know where they're going to lay it as far as who's responsible for paying for all these tests.
Well, and that's another thing I was wondering. Obviously they mentioned that you're going to get these at-home tests that are going to be much cheaper. Here's the thing, though. If we can make the vaccine free, why can't we make these tests free? That's my thought on that.
And if we can make the vaccine free, why can't we make diabetic medication free? And
Absolutely.
why can't we make cancer medication free?
Absolute facts. Erica does make a good point that I've often wondered, though, in relation to this vaccine. Erica says we are forced to vaccinate our kids to go to school. How is this different? And I've wondered how long it's going to take for this to become one of the vaccinations for your kids to be able to attend to public school.
And that's another thing. Public school requires it, but that doesn't mean you have to vaccinate your children. You just have to homeschool or private school.
Right.
There are other ways to school without going through public school.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the people that don't believe in these vaccines don't have to get them. That's part one of that. Part two of that is, again, these are vaccines that stop your polio, your measles, your mumps. I mean, it actually stops you from contracting these viruses.
Mm-hmm.
This vaccine is known to not necessarily stop
Just lessen
contracting
the
the
effect.
virus.
Right. Just
And
lessen the
again,
effect.
it goes back to the recovery rate.
Mm-hmm.
If
Absolutely.
it's such a high recovery rate, why do we have to vaccine?
Okay. One thing I wanted to address that I felt like when I read it was very dangerous. And this is kind of getting into the sports world, but I wanted to ask your idea. So this past Saturday, the University of Arkansas boasted a 75,000 people attendance for the game against the Texas Longhorns. Go Hogs. But the university's current stance on vaccination and COVID in general is you do not have to prove that you had a negative test, and you do not have to prove that you've tested negative within the last 7 days to attend a University of Arkansas sports function.
And that's just
very
one
dangerous.
school in the state.
Right, absolutely.
And that's just one state in the country.
But you're talking about 75,000 people. I feel like that's going. I understand the vaccination situation. What I don't understand is not requiring the negative test.
And then how much NFL have you watched?
I watched, obviously yesterday.
So the players have mandated tests. They're not mandating that anybody that goes to the games be tested or vaccinated or any of that.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got all those fans right beside each other. When we had gone on vacation and went to the Braves game, those stands were pretty packed, and nobody was wearing masks. Well, I say nobody. There were a lot of people that did not wear masks, and you didn't have to prove whether or not you were vaccinated.
How do you feel about that? Do you feel like that is going to cause an unnecessary uptick in cases? Not necessarily deaths, because we do agree that the resiliency from it is quite large, the rate of being able to bounce back. But
Right.
Unnecessary cases, I still feel like the university could do a better job than what they're doing right now. They could at least require a negative test.
Do I think that it'll increase cases? Yes, I believe it will increase cases. Just because you have so many people in the area. But again, I don't believe that it is transmitted near as easily through the breathing, through the air, as it is via touch.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's more about places where several people touch the same things. So will there be an uptick in cases? Yeah, I'm sure there will be, but I think that just lends more toward a herd immunity.
Okay. And Erica does chime in. She does say, yes, there will be an uptick, will be worse in October and then get better. I wouldn't be surprised. Honestly, as we get into the winter months, people are going to be staying in. I don't expect an uptick. I expect, honestly, we see a downwards trend. Once we get into the winter months, people aren't going to be going out as much. They're going to be staying in. I feel
They may
like
not go out as much, but I mean, during the cold months is when you've got all your NFL, all your high school games, all your college games. So you're still going to have a lot of people attending those.
True. Good point. Well, it'll definitely be something that we're going to continue to keep our eye on. Now, over the weekend, this past Saturday, as a matter of fact,
Hold on, but before we get into that, what did you say the numbers were for this week?
For this week?
New cases and deaths.
Okay, hold on. And of course, I'll go ahead and cite my reference here. I'm going from the New York Times. This week, the past week, we have had a total of it looks like 2,200 roughly cases. I'm having to do math, y'all. Roughly Is that new cases per day? Hold on. I'm going to share my screen here on this, and maybe, Manny, you can help me break this down a little bit better. Tab, Arkansas COVID numbers. Here we go. Okay. So I don't know if this is the number. The 7-day average on September 11th was 1,595 days per 1,595 new cases that day. Okay, here we go. This is the last week. Okay, so 937, 583, 2,000 on September 8th, 2,481 on September 9th, 2,159 on the 10th, 1,749 and 1116. So roughly, I'd say close to 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'd say roughly close to 10,000 cases over the past 7 days. And then roughly 2,000 per day, or excuse me, deaths. Roughly 23 plus 25, 50 plus another 23, 63, or 73, 83, 93, 97. About, I'd say close to 150 in deaths over the past 7 days.
All right, today is the 13th.
Correct.
I want to start tracking this stuff.
Okay, definitely.
Live on the air.
Breakthrough cases. How many of these are breakthrough cases that people survived? How many are breakthrough cases that people unfortunately died? It just depends.
One of the most interesting things, and I'll just put this out there, is while they were talking about the large number of children that were contracting what is this crap? COVID. We have not seen a mass number of child deaths.
You know, that's actually very interesting. So we have seen the uptick in cases, not as high as what I expected. I'll be completely honest with that. Not as high as I expected. I expected we would be averaging well over 2,000 cases per day. Not near as high as I expected. And the deaths have pretty much remained steady in those 20 to 30 range since school started. So I'm wondering, there hasn't been a major uptick in either category. I'm actually really interested in this.
So it seems like it's more contractable by young people, but it doesn't seem to be near as severe as the original COVID.
Absolutely. At least not in young people. It doesn't seem. I'll say this: it feels like young people are a lot more resilient to the Delta variant than older Americans. You know, even teenagers and young American or young adults. It seems like that there's a lot of rebound. Erica, you're right, though. I would agree. A lot of people will argue one death is too many. I would agree. You know, tell that to the person who doesn't have a family member sitting at their dinner table anymore. You know,
well,
I can agree.
That I mean, you can make that argument anywhere. Drunk driving, one death is too many.
Absolutely.
I mean, OSHA violations. Now, since you mentioned OSHA, you know, one death is too many. People die, period.
Speaking of OSHA, and we've been on this for 30 minutes, but I do want to get your thoughts on how the president is going about getting at these private businesses. Do you think that he made a misstep in going through OSHA rather than, you know, maybe trying to put a law out there, trying to run it through Congress? Do you think he made a strategical error in trying to go through OSHA or going through OSHA?
I do, but like I said, I feel that it is based on his comment of saying it's not about freedom.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to use OSHA to strong arm people into doing what he wants.
Right. And again, you know, the reason why I don't necessarily – we both knew this was coming. Manny, even you know, in your wildest dreams, when we talked 2 weeks ago, when we got the FDA approval, you knew in the back of your mind that this was going to start getting a lot more.
Yeah,
his language was going to get ratcheted up because, you know, even like he said, hey, it has FDA approval now. The fuck are you waiting on? Excuse my language, but what are you waiting on? And I mean, I can agree with that to a point. A lot of people say,
I can't. What am I waiting on? I'm waiting on it to be the disaster that you're claiming it is. Too many people are recovering for you to say that this is such a disaster that everyone needs to go get vaccinated right now.
I mean, over 1 million American. Wait, hold on. Is it over 1 million? Hold on. We're going to figure this out over the last, I can only go back 30 days. Over the last 30 days, we'll look at the total deaths in the U.S. 661. So 500,000 people in the last 30 days have died from COVID.
How much?
661,000 over the past 30 days. So, I mean, that's a lot of Americans. I mean, we just celebrated a day that we just not celebrated, but we just mourned a day on 9/11 where only 3,000 people died. And here we are 20 years later, still mourning that day. Not saying we shouldn't, but I mean, over the last 661,000 Americans have passed away from COVID.
Yeah, but
I look at that as retrospect.
But is that number accurate?
That's true,
because
too.
We know for a while that if they had stopped, it's even longer. But we know for a while that they were just counting deaths regardless of how the person died.
Right, as long as their COVID status was positive.
COVID, it didn't matter how it died. It was ruled a COVID death.
Right, exactly. And
Erica just said that. Spike, but you have COVID, so we'll call it a COVID death.
Right. As long as you were COVID positive, it was called a COVID death. Agreed. That's where they were with that is, and they still may be. I'm not sure.
That's what I was saying. I don't know that they ever stopped counting it that way.
Right. I mean, you could make the argument that COVID helped it along, but if COVID wasn't the as I'm thinking about a death certificate, if COVID wasn't the primary cause of your death, it's kind of hard.
Right. If you had stage 4 cancer, and they were already saying that you got 2 weeks to live, but you died within a week because you had COVID, I don't think that should have been counted as a COVID death.
Right. COVID just sped up the process a little bit. And I don't mean for that to sound as callous as it came off. I promise.
And that's another thing. Whenever you're using fear tactics and you're using bullying tactics and you're doing everything you can to try to push your agenda, there is something definitely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If it is the great savior, this vaccine that he is pushing, why are they having to scare you and strong arm you into getting it?
I mean, touche. Good point. Okay, so we have got to move on. Okay, so let's get on to the 9/11 situation. We got a story here from ABC News on the events.
And now to the 20th anniversary of 9/11. You're looking live at Ground Zero this morning, where 20 years ago, 2 planes hit the Twin Towers and changed our country forever. Nearly 3,000 people were killed in what became the deadliest terror attacks on U.S. soil. And tomorrow, families will gather at Ground Zero to read the names of all those who lost their lives there. Amy Robach is there at Ground Zero with more. Good morning, Amy.
Hey, good morning to you, Diane. Yes, and I've been talking about this today. I know you've probably been outside. Is exactly the same way it felt 20 years ago, a day shy of 20 years ago. It's a crisp, beautiful September day, and it really just takes you back to that moment. And yes, there are commemorations scheduled to take place tomorrow, as they have each and every year. The names of all of the victims, those who perished here in the Twin Towers, nearly 3,000 people, will be read aloud, and security security has been heightened. Police have already sent more battalions down here to make sure that everything is safe as families commemorate this very special and painful anniversary. There is no known credible terror threat. We should point that out. But again, there will be a heightened police presence. We know President Biden will be on hand as well, as you mentioned, for at least part of the ceremony, honoring those 2,700 people who died that day. He will also attend the ceremony at the Pentagon, where 184 people perished when the third plane slammed into that building, and then the one in Shanksville, where hero passengers aboard the fourth plane forced it down before it made it to its intended target in the nation's capital, killing all 40 passengers and crew on board. And while it's been 2 decades, as anyone knows who has lost anyone they loved, the pain is still real, it is still fresh, and there are still 1,000 families, Diane, who don't have that closure that they're looking for. Unidentified remains. A few were able to be identified, actually 2 this past week, 2 decades later, but the work is still continuing, and the pain, of course, is continuing, as it will for all of the anniversaries to come, Diane.
Amazing to think that they're still working to identify some of those remains 20 years later. And Amy, what's it like for these families as they get ready for this annual tradition to read the names of their loved ones and mark 20 years now since their loss?
You know, this is something that is really an unspeakable tragedy. This is the deadliest terror attack on U.S. soil in our country's history, and yet it's so personal for these families who survived, and certainly looking to commemorate and to honor the people who gave their life so bravely in these Twin Towers. We're already starting to see people gather here. When we got to this hotel, which is overlooking the 9/11 memorial, a big group of bikers with their T-shirts, never forget. We're about to do a bike ride around Manhattan in honor of those who have fallen that day. And so many people coming here to pay their respects. And again, so many families still unfortunately looking for closure for their loved ones here who died 20 years ago, Diane.
All right, Amy Robach at Ground Zero. Amy, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here.
So, Erica, I'm going to wait to show your comment because we're going to get into Trump later. But let's just talk about what did happen in these traditional events that the presidential parties normally attend. Bush, I believe every active president except for one was present this time. What did you make of this controversy? Joe Biden looking down at his watch during, I believe, when the names were being read of the victims on 9/11. What did you make of that? Do you think the media is blowing that out of proportion and the right wing is kind of just grasping at it? Or do you think it's actually disrespectful that Joe, checked the time whenever those names were being read?
Whenever you've got multiple places that you're trying to hit, you've got to look. I think they're blowing it out of proportion, and I think that the Republicans are grabbing at anything they can to make him look bad.
Right.
He does plenty by himself. I mean, they don't have to grab at every little thing. But while the people in New York are focused on what happened in New York, there were other things that were going on that day that memorials are set up for, and he's expected to make all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a time thing.
Now, I know you said you worked a little bit on Saturday. Were you able to see any of the events or any of the speeches or anything that the presidents gave?
I was not.
Okay. Erica says pastors look down at their watches during the church services, and it's rude. It is rude, but Antonio is right. He has a schedule he must keep. I would agree. Visually, it looks bad, but like you said, Antonio, the man's the president of the United States. He had multiple places to be that day, as did every single one of the former presidents that were there as well. I believe Bush went to everywhere with him. I'm not sure about Obama and all the other ex-living presidents.
If it was the only place for him to be, like pastors, as Erica has pointed out, if that was the only place for him to be, then yes, highly rude. But when you're looking at multiple places that you're expected to appear at, you shouldn't sit there and wonder why he's looking at his watch.
Man, I tell you, they said something interesting in that video that just kind of blew me away. The fact that they're still identifying remains 20 years later. Like, number one, holy crap, what a good job they're able to do, because I can only imagine 20 years later, there can't be much left of these remains, I wouldn't think.
Your mic is cracking real bad.
Oh, I apologize. Let me see if I can fix it. Okay. I turned it down a little bit. Did that help?
Nope, still crackling.
Okay. That any better?
Now all I hear is static.
Okay, what about that? Static still?
Now stop.
Okay, cool. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Okay, so what I was asking about was one of the things that struck me in that video was the fact that they said that there were still remains being identified some 20 years later. So you're thinking, holy crap. Like, number one, holy crap, good job that they're still able to do that, because 20 years, those remains, there can't be much left of them, correct?
That's what I would assume. I didn't know that they were still holding on to remains that they hadn't identified.
I know, right? Like, good on them. Good on them. And, that's got to be some very crappy work to have to try to identify these remains. So definitely impressive. Erica says, I was in NYC while they were building the memorial. Very humbling. So sad, and such a perspective it gave me. Yes, still identifying remains. 2 found last week. I think they really drugged their feet on the trial for those responsible. Maybe is for evidence for the trial, and it could be. I believe that everybody so far has been to trial, though. That they linked. I could be wrong.
Are we set to talk about Biden releasing?
No, we're not.
These documents. Okay. I actually saved the link, intended to read it.
Did you?
But have not had the chance to.
I have not seen a link, so that's very interesting to me. But yes, I believe it was late. I want to say Saturday. I got the notification on my phone.
Yeah, your mic is real bad now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So now you can hear me.
Can't hear you now.
Try now. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, but it doesn't sound good.
Well, obviously, it's not going to sound good. It's a headset mic compared to going through a soundboard.
No, it's very robotic sounding.
That's a little odd. Definitely shouldn't sound robotic. Anyway, what I was saying there, I did get the notification that they actually did release those documents late Saturday. I haven't been able to read them. Is there any sort of, and of course, yes, Erica, nothing can go wrong live. But is there any sort of idea what was in those documents? I know it was related to the Saudi involvement, Saudi government leaders' involvement in 9/11.
I cannot really understand anything you're saying, man. It's
1 second.
There.
Do what?
There. You're clear.
Okay, cool. I don't know what happened, but hey. Anyway, is there any Erica actually said she could hear me clear. Maybe it was your internet there at the local no-tell motel.
Right.
Put up in. Any idea what type of what was in those documents that they released, though? And I'm assuming that they were still heavily redacted.
It's mainly about the Saudi involvement.
Okay. And see, that's actually interesting to me because from what I understand, supposedly, now this is supposedly the Saudi government funded these terrorists, this terrorist operation. Am I correct on that? In my memory of that?
That's what people are pointing toward. A lot of the people that did hijack the planes are known to have Saudi connections and stuff like that. That's why continuing to work with Saudi Arabia has always been looked down on since 9/11 because we're saying, we're going to war with Iraq to fight terrorism, but we're still allied with Saudi Arabia, who has shown to have the same links to all this.
And that's actually really interesting that you bring that up. But my question, and obviously, yes, the family members deserve to see this, but releasing them on such a wide scale, what's the end game here? I mean, we just got out of Afghanistan. A lot of people agree that, we were there, we way overstayed our stay. Is the end goal that now we need to go kick Saudi's ass? Because I don't agree with that.
The end goal is to please the American people. They are the ones that were pressing. Well, the families of the deceased are the ones that were pressing to have more information released on Saudi's involvement.
Right. And again, I guess you have to release them on such a wide scale because the families, you can't really necessarily put like a gag order or anything on them and enforce it that they couldn't say, yeah, Saudis, some bastards, they did all of this. You couldn't really expect to keep that quiet. So yeah, I guess it's wide scale release this type of information. Right. It just kind of struck me as odd. I'm just like at this point, I'm like, it doesn't do anything to move the ball towards justice. Right. If Saudi was involved, the only justice that we can get is going and bombing the hell out of Saudi. And nobody's for that. So, that's where I am on that as far as that goes.
Well, the whole deal is we're still using Saudi Arabia's oil. And that's where a lot of Americans point the finger saying that we're dropping the ball because we want their oil.
Right. And that's true too. That's a very good point. That's a lot of people are up in arms about the fact that we lost all of our resources that we were having access that honestly we shouldn't have had complete control over in Afghanistan because we left. Right. A lot of people are freaking out that Russia and China now control that.
Right.
One of
the things that the reporter said that I found I didn't quite agree with was when she said that those people from those towers gave their lives so bravely. They didn't give their life. Their life was taken. There was a big difference. When you join the military and you go to a forward fighting front line, that's giving your life.
Okay. I can see your point there. One, though, just to play devil's advocate that I want to ask you about, though, is what do you classify United 93? I would consider that.
Those are people that, yes, definitely gave their life because they fought to make sure that the terrorists didn't take out another building.
Right, exactly. And, I would agree. Those people did have their life. They were murdered. 3,000 people in the World Trade Center were murdered that day, senselessly. And whether you believe it's over religion or what have you.
There are some that did give their life. You've got the firefighters, you've got the police officers that went in trying to save people. I've watched a lot of stuff this past week on the History Channel about how the towers were built and stuff like that. You look at flaws and things that they did that didn't help the situation any. The stairs, the stairwells, being all grouped together in the center of the building so that they had more area outside around by the windows for businesses to have their offices. Doing only 3 stairwells instead of 6 that were usually required on a building that tall.
Here's one that I've never understood that wasn't widely addressed, but I've always wondered why this one hasn't been widely addressed. I don't think we've built any buildings that tall since. I'm not sure about World Trade, One World Trade, if it is as tall or taller. But
I think it was as tall. They were trying to mimic the scale.
So my thing with that is, if you know what happened, and obviously One World Trade will always be a target in my mind. We'll always have to protect it like it is a target. Why would you put yourself in another situation where the similar situation could occur and you could have people again trapped where they have no chance for survival?
But see, that's the difference. The new tower that they have built isn't built like the other one was. Like I said, all the stairwells being in the center of the building, when the jet came through and crashed into the building, it severed those stairwells because you had them all right there grouped together. So there was no way for the people in the upper floors above that impact zone to even get down.
Right, exactly.
Now, had there been stairwells on the opposite side of that, there still would have been a way for people to exit the building.
Oh, okay.
So that's one issue right there. Because it was the Port Authority, and the Port Authority was able to rewrite the rules and the laws governing building at that time. To my knowledge, they still can. They are the ones that pushed to only have the 3 stairwells instead of 6 that were normally required.
Wow. Okay. I did not know that.
So you look at stuff like that.
That's actually really interesting to me. I've always thought that the World Trade Center was this supposedly, impenetrable, almost impossible to bring down building. And especially that's where a lot of conspiracy theories come in from. The buildings shouldn't have fell. They weren't built to fall. They had all these safety mechanisms. But you're actually pointing out a lot of things that I didn't know about, some possible safety flaws that they had in them.
And then the other thing that I just through watching this stuff this weekend, they were talking about the fuel because the fuel in these aircraft were full. Once everything ruptured and that fuel went into the building, excuse me, it actually went down the elevator chutes.
The elevator shaft. Yeah, I believe I did know that one.
So that was one place that I never thought about. That's how a lot of that damage would have gotten to the center and further down to cause a collapse.
Okay.
Not to mention every floor was completely open, floor by floor, because your elevators and your stairwells were all pushed to the center specifically so you had all the window office space.
Right.
And again, all that open air allowed the fuel, all that open air allowed the fuel to just burn freely.
Okay. Now, that's actually really interesting. I never thought about it that way. I knew about it going down the elevator shaft, but I never thought about, and obviously it's something now that I think about it, but, how that actually impacted or furthered the impact of the crash.
Right.
By doing that. So that's definitely interesting. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to.
Before we move on, I had heard someone say that every year we go through this. They say never forget, but they won't let us forget. Um, I think the important thing on all of this is what we seen again on the 12th. You had more people pulling together behind our nation's symbol, which is our flag, than you had the last few years.
I would completely agree. I mean, if 9/11 happened in 2021, let's say this just happened last Saturday, I don't think the same response occurs. We are so politically divided that I believe that in this case it would have been under a Democratic president. So I believe the Republicans would have automatically wanted to launch an investigation. They would have automatically wanted to pin it at Joe's feet, I'm saying. Obviously, they waited a good 3-4 years to try to pin it at Bush's feet, but this current political environment is so toxic and crazy to me that we would have immediately seen investigations, sort of like the January 6th thing, where people would have wanted to, impeach the president and yada, yada, yada. When honestly, the way you can criticize a lot of the way the Bush administration did things post 9/11. A lot. He gave you a lot of meat on that bone. But what he did in that wake of 9/11 and during 9/11, what people don't understand. People want to criticize how he acted. He didn't react in the classroom. He didn't do that. That was the definition of presidential, in my opinion.
Right.
The man did everything he could to just keep an even keel. Mind you, he's freaking out. His wife is in D.C. alone, and he's in Florida. He doesn't even know, if she's a target. So obviously you have that personal anxiety. You have anxiety on top of you about the rest of the country. Not to mention, you're the president of the United States. Now everybody's looking at you to make these important and tough decisions. And I think he did a phenomenal job as president in those days. I think that I don't think that we would get that today. I don't think that he would get that leeway.
But what I'm trying to say though is you did still kind of get that, before the football games, Sunday. You had the memorial that they put on,
absolutely,
along with the Star Spangled Banner, sung by one of the person that died, one of their daughters. And one of the things I pointed out to my wife was, look, there's nobody kneeling. Not everybody's got their hand over their heart,
right?
But they're standing there, and they're seeming to understand what the flag means,
right?
The representation there. So as long as the 9/11 stuff doesn't become just ceremony that we go through, not thinking about, not really, giving weight to it, I think we continue to do it.
And 50 years from now, when this becomes Pearl Harbor, our Pearl Harbor, yeah, maybe that'll happen, because honestly, I every December 7th, I'm like, well, hey, it's Pearl Harbor Day. But I kind of go about my day. 9/11, because I have that, emotional connection to it, obviously is a bigger deal to me. But I completely agree. In the non-political realm, I think your average Joe American will, at least for the generations that were on the earth during that time, will always hold reverence for that day. Just like, our grandfathers, great grandfathers, so on and so forth did for Pearl Harbor. So,
yeah.
As long as we don't lose that, you make a good point. We're on the right track, and it did seem like we were able to come together, at least for Saturday and Sunday, and put all the bullshit aside. once again, you wish Washington could do that. I don't think that that's available anymore. But, for the average everyday American, absolutely. Okay. So moving on, Iran training Middle East fighters using drones. And we have a story from Speed News on this. Now, I will warn you, this is Mr. Robot voice. So I do apologize for that. But this was the only story in these obscure stories that Manny Hispani sends me, I can find. So here we go.
Iran training Middle East fighters to fly drones. Israel. Iran is providing foreign fighters with drone training at an airbase near the city of Isfahan, Israel's defense minister alleged a month after Tehran came under global scrutiny over a suspected drone attack on an Israeli-managed tanker off Oman. In what his office described as a new disclosure, Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz said on Sunday that Iran was using Kashan airbase north of Isfahan to train terror operatives from Yemen, Iraq, Syria and Lebanon in flying Iranian-made UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. Tehran was also trying to transfer know-how that would allow the manufacturing of UAVs in the Gaza Strip, on Israel's southern border, Gantz told a conference at Reichman University near Tel Aviv. His office provided what it said were satellite images showing UAVs on the runways at Kashan. There was no immediate comment from Iran. Israel has combined military attacks with diplomatic pressure to beat back what it describes as an effort by its arch-foe, whose nuclear negotiations with the West are deadlocked, to beef up regional clout through Allied fighters. A blast on July 29 on board the Mercer Street, a Liberian-flagged, Japanese-owned petroleum product tanker managed by Israeli-owned Zodiac Maritime, near the mouth of the Gulf. A key oil shipping route killed 2 crew, a Briton and a Romanian, the U.S. military said. Explosives experts from the Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier, which deployed to assist the Mercer Street, concluded the explosion was from a drone produced in Iran, which was accused by other world powers of the attack. Iran has denied involvement.
So, my first question with this is, are we still in the global war on terror? Because my thing is, you can't dip your toe. You're either in or you're out.
Right.
So we either need to, we've already seen President Biden slap Iran down, for lack of a better, term, once during his presidency with that strike, killing that general. This is something, again, that if we are fully out of the global war on terror, then this is between Iran and Israel, and, sorry about your luck. But if we're still in the business of hunting down terrorists, Iran's looking like a pretty good target right now.
Right, and since you got ISIS or whoever coming back in, how much of that has spilled over to Iran?
It's interesting. So I believe that the rise of ISIL created the Taliban once again becoming stronger. I believe the Taliban taking over Afghanistan is going to strengthen and embolden these other terrorist organizations. This is exactly what I was talking about when the Afghanistan withdrawal happened. We are now, honestly, in my opinion, in a more dangerous position than we were September 10th, 2001. We are at a bigger threat because I'll be honest, I'm just sitting here waiting. I'm waiting for it.
Well, what I'm looking at is how close are Iran and Afghanistan going to work together?
It's a good question. They
don't seem to be fighting each other.
They don't.
The Afghani. Do you even call them the Afghani army anymore? Or
I guess you could call them the Taliban army. Yeah.
The Taliban don't seem to be using the stuff that was left by the U.S. government against Iran. So they're not looking at them as a hostile threat, even though Iran is attacking Japanese ships.
Here's something I want to put in your brain to think about. I'm interested, while we're talking about wanting to see numbers, I want to see how many actually, because this could sway my idea on the equipment that was left. I want to see if those planes were demilitarized. And what that means is basically if they're incapable of ever working again. Every report I've seen so far have said that they are fully functional. But I'm wondering, because we have tended to demilitarize assets and leave them places. Just worry about getting the classified shit out, basically.
Right.
I'm actually interested in seeing if that is what happened in this situation. But, again, you look at it, everything that the Taliban has said, I hate to use this term, but we're a kindler, gentler Taliban. We're a bunch of teddy bears. It's proven to be bullshit. And the fact that American media bought it for a little bit and was like, well, let's just take a wait and see approach. Like, me and you both knew that day. We were like, shit, this is the Taliban here.
Right.
Hey, why the hell are we taking a wait and see approach with these motherfuckers when we know what they're capable of?
But yes, you're definitely right. Either we need to be fighting them or we need to step away.
You can't be half in, half out.
Yeah.
President Biden can't come out and say, hey, I'm going to sanction you guys, because that's going to look weak.
Yeah.
But he also can't turn around and bomb the hell out of them, because that's going to get us into another war.
Right.
So you're either in or you're out at this point, President Biden. That's where I am on that. Manny, you got anything to say before we go to commercial?
No, not really.
Okay, absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with more American Idiots after this. Each and every Monday night, join the American Idiots podcast for a fresh look at the top headlines that are currently dividing our country. It's the American Idiots podcast only on Podcast Network 49.
I've been champion for a long time, Tony, simply because I'm the best there is. I got more women waiting for me in that hallway, quivering, shaking, having conniptions than you met in the last 5 years. You know why? Because I just happen to be Slick Rick.
Join Michael and Aaron each week as they break down the most influential and sometimes downright hilarious pay-per-views in professional wrestling history. It's the Wrestling Wrap-Up Show only for you on Podcast Network 49. Each and every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, join Michael Carnahan and Lisa O'Brien for the Clear and Convincing podcast, live on Podcast Network 49, where we look at the most infamous cases in our country's history, not from the court of public opinion, but from the court's perspective. It's the Clear and Convincing Show on Podcast Network 49. Each and every Friday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, join Podcast Network 49's newest host, Felicia Collins-Brogy, for Positive Tea with Thee, your weekly dose of positivity only on Podcast Network 49. It has never been any easier to keep up with all of your favorite Podcast Network 49 shows. If you're a fan of just listening along, you can always go to iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your favorite podcasts and subscribe. If you're more of a visual listener to our shows, go ahead and check out our Facebook and YouTube lives, or you can always go in and check out the archived content. Once again, it's never been easier to keep up with Podcast Network 49. Welcome to the American Idiots Podcast, the show where we take the hottest topics currently dividing our country and we debate them with our diverse group of hosts. So sit back and strap in, as for the next 2 hours we leave no story undebated and no politician will be spared. It's the American Idiots Podcast live on Podcast Network 49, and it begins right now. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, here on the American Idiot Show, hour number 2, about to get underway. And
is there a reason you grouped all of them right there in one spot?
I just give us a break. I just give us a chance to breathe for a little bit before we go much further. Honestly, it gives us enough time to, if we need to go and relieve ourselves or go grab something to drink or something, it gives us enough time that we don't have to worry about it.
Yes.
Okay, so next up we have the Texas Attorney General sticking true to Governor Abbott's word, and he has begun the process of suing school districts for enforcing mask mandates. And we have a story from 12 News Now on this.
August was officially the deadliest month in Southeast Texas in the entire pandemic. 230 of our neighbors died from the virus. And just take a look at this sharp increase. Only January rivals the total number of deaths, with 219 across the region that month. Certainly a very serious situation here in Southeast Texas. Health officials are still stressing the importance of wearing your mask, maintaining social distance, and getting the vaccine.
New info here at 10. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton has announced lawsuits against school districts that defied the governor's executive order and issued their own mask mandates. Right now, no Southeast Texas district is named. The state is currently targeting the larger districts. Paxton put out a statement saying in part tonight, quote, not only are superintendents across Texas openly violating state law, but they're using district resources that ought to be used for teacher merit raises or other educational benefits to defend their unlawful political maneuvering.
Now, Paxton isn't the only Republican to wage a new lawsuit. The Republican National Committee has said it plans to sue the Biden administration. It's an attempt to fight new COVID mandates. The administration's new pandemic policies include vaccine or testing mandates for businesses with more than 100 employees, federal workers, and teachers under federal authority.
So, Manny, you saw it right there. The Texas Attorney General is continuing the fight against the mask mandate for these individual school districts. Now, me and you have both said on this show that we think that it should be left up to the individual school districts rather than the governor's office or the presidential executive branch's decision making. What's your thoughts on now the Attorney General putting pen to pad? He says that they openly violated law, but you just heard the anchor call it an executive order from the governor's office. We've made that stark contrast. A law is not an executive order is not a law. An executive order is worth what it's written on in paper. First off, what do you think about these lawsuits from the Attorney General's office? And second, do you think they have any merit?
What exactly are the lawsuits for?
The lawsuits are for these superintendents choosing to enforce a mask mandate on
right. But what is the suit? What is the wording on the suit? Are they trying to get them to stop mandating it? Are they trying to get them to use other wording?
So what they're doing is they're trying to stop the mask mandate, and according to what the story just said, they're using it. They're using the guys that they are using they're using school funds for stuff that should be given to teachers or stuff like that. Merit bonuses.
And how does the sign saying and how does the sign saying that you have to wear a mask take any money from anything?
Exactly.
That's one thing I don't understand. No, I'm still in the same boat I was in before. It should be left up to the superintendents of these school districts as to how best to govern their school.
Exactly.
Bottom line, just because your district doesn't have a lot of cases, my district may. And putting things in place to try to curb some stuff is smart.
Absolutely. I would agree. I mean, and you looked at their numbers there in Texas alone. Obviously, we're doing something different than what they're doing. Obviously, the population a little bit bigger in Texas, but just deaths alone, I think I could be wrong. It's been since the beginning of that video, but I think they said 620 in a month alone deaths from COVID-19.
Right.
Obviously, they're dealing with a little bit more of a serious situation than we are here in Arkansas.
Yeah, a lot of their schools are larger by far. So I'm sure that plays into it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think the government needs to back up. Because the other thing is, like your student handbooks, are all of those written by the same company going out to these different schools, or is each school responsible for their own handbook, their own rules, their own things that they pay attention to?
I would agree. I mean, this is one of the first times I've ever seen a state government overreach into a school district. Like, it's kind of making me scratch my head. Like, you can trust me to.
There have been times where, Little Rock School District was taken over.
Well, yeah,
by the state.
absolutely.
So sometimes you have things that come in, but they were showing misappropriation of funds and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to my knowledge, when the state took over, they have done better since.
Right, absolutely. And they have. I think they've actually gotten out of state control now. I could be wrong on that, but I believe they
I
have.
think you're right.
Here's the thing for me though. You can tell these school districts and these school boards that they can make policies for things like kids being truant to class and things like that. But God, we can't let them handle COVID. We can't let them handle their own stuff, that they're on the ground every single day dealing with this, seeing these numbers, seeing these increases. We can't allow them to do that now.
Right.
It's kind of
definitely some big issues. If you are going to let them govern themselves through a superintendent, then you need to let them govern themselves.
Exactly. You need to let that superintendent do their job, in my opinion. And, in this case, it's the superintendent's decision whether, we necessarily agree with it. And I know, Mandy, you don't agree with masks at all. But
right.
You say, if this superintendent who was hired to make this type of decision is saying this, then okay, that's their job,
right.
Which is very telling to me and very interesting. But I just wanted to get into that because we talked about Governor Abbott 2 weeks ago actually testing positive for COVID-19, and yet he's still continuing on this crusade. Okay, let's get into one of the interesting topics here for tonight, and I wanted to save Erica's comments for this specific topic. President Trump did not attend any of the 9/11, the traditional 9/11 memorial events. Erica, this is a comment I wanted to save here. She said, President Trump did a great job addressing this Saturday. No speech written, just from the heart. It was impromptu. The heart of a leader and the heart of a New Yorker. Gave another nod that he was running in 2024. And we're going to get into that in a moment as well, talking about President Trump and the potential 2024 run. But we actually have a story from the Hill with some comments from President Trump on 9/11.
For the great people of our country, this is a very sad day. September 11th represents great sorrow for our country. Many things were displayed that day, including, most importantly, the bravery of our police, fire, and first responders of every kind. The job they did was truly unbelievable. We love them and we thank them. It is also a sad time for the way our war on those that did such harm to our country ended last week. The loss of 13 great warriors and the many more who were wounded should never have happened. Overall, 250 people were killed in Afghanistan last week, and so many more were seriously injured. We had $85 billion of the finest and most sophisticated military equipment taken from us without even a shot being fired. The leader of our country was made to look like a fool, and that can never be allowed to happen. It was caused by bad planning, incredible weakness, and leaders who truly didn't understand what was happening. This is the 20th year of this war and should have been a year of victory and honor and strength. Instead, Joe Biden and his inept administration surrendered in defeat. We will live on, but sadly, our country will be wounded for a long period of time. We will struggle to recover from the embarrassment this incompetence has caused. Do not fear, however. America will be made great again.
And there you heard the obvious nod to a potential 2024 run. Manny, I want to address this first. Honestly, as a Republican, as an American, as a human being, I'm disgusted by what he chose to address during his time there. Obviously, he paid for it. He can do whatever he wants with his time. I'm disgusted. He chose to take 9/11, which is something that is beyond politics, and he chose to turn it into politics. He chose to turn it into an attack on Joe Biden. There was plenty of time to do that any other time. Don't do it on this day. Manny, floor's yours on that one.
He linked it together. The reason we were in this war was because of what happened on 9/11. So to put that in focus, that this is a remembrance of what happened then. This war was started because of what happened then. Um, Everything that has happened with the withdrawal and what's going on in the area reflects back on what happened then. I I understand why he used that platform the way he did. Um, he is trying to point out that because of the way this was handled, what happened on 9/11/2001 was almost for nothing.
And I mean, we've had this discussion before that I would agree. I agree with a lot of the things he said. My problem is he chose to do it on 9/11.
Right.
You can release that on 9/12. Leave it at this was a terrible day, yada yada yada. Here's the other thing that he chose to do that kind of struck me as not surprising because it's Donald Trump, but I'm wondering what you're going to think of my interpretation. Instead of attending the normal events where he's going to be amongst the other former presidents, amongst the current administration, he chose to go out and do his own thing. A lot of people look at that as him doing a good thing and, not necessarily making it about himself. In my mind, he did. In my mind, he singled out himself. He chose to put the spotlight on himself by not doing what presidents do during these times and, attending these functions as a former as a former president, excuse me. I think what he did was put a little bit more spotlight on himself again, and he's never a guy to want to miss the spotlight. I think that this was very strategic, and it's depressing to me to say that, but I think this was very strategic from the former president as to why he didn't attend and why he chose to go out and do his own thing and, personally visit the random firehouses and the victims and so on and so forth. I felt like he wanted to put the spotlight on himself. Maybe I'm being harsh with that, but what other cause could there have been in my mind?
And the way I look at it, no matter what he done, somebody's going to be upset.
Mm-hmm.
Had he gone, they would have said, "Oh, look at him doing that." He didn't go, "Oh, look at him doing that."
You think we still would have gotten? You think we would have gotten a President Trump story if he would have went?
Oh yeah, yeah. You've got the people that hate him no matter what. So whatever he does is going to be the wrong move. As far as him going and visiting these houses, these firehouses and police stations and stuff, on his own, it's more personal.
Okay,
Than going with a big group of, oh, we're all doing this, okay, and then we're all going here.
Can see that.
So it's not. I don't feel that he was trying to separate himself and look what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I felt it was more of, like I was talking about before, when it becomes just ceremony. Okay, we're going to do this, and then we're going to go do this, and we're going to go do this, because that's what we do every
more
year.
Of a personal one-on-one
right.
type thing.
He made it a more personal thing.
And I can see that too. I can absolutely see both sides of the spectrum. I just, again, this is another example of President Trump not, and this is something that I know you like about him, but not being a traditional president. Right. Not following presidential norms. And again, I'm not here to say he was necessarily wrong. I feel like there may have been some motivation behind it, but hey.
And the other thing is, who planned everybody else's day?
That's actually an interesting question. I don't know. Who
I'm
does
pretty
plan
sure
the former president's day?
the same person didn't plan everybody's day. I'm sure they have their own person that organizes their day for them. Okay, you got to make this meeting. You got to make this meeting.
That's a good question.
That kind of thing.
Because on this occasion, I don't know. Would the current administration plan out, okay, Bush, Carter, Clinton, we're going to meet at the World Trade Center at yada, yada, yada time, and we're going to do that. Then we're going to fly to Shanksville, so on and so forth.
I'm sure Biden's people contacted everybody else's people. This is our schedule.
Okay.
This is what we're going to do.
Okay.
And their people just said, okay, we'll follow in suit.
Right.
Whether that was extended to Trump or not, I don't know.
It's a good point.
And whether or not Trump said, no, I don't want to do it like that, not because he thinks he's better or pulling himself apart, but because he does want to make it more personal with each place that he goes to.
That is very interesting to me because, especially Trump has, I think we can all agree Trump has an ego bigger than most, but any president is going to have an ego. It's actually interesting to me to think that a Bush or a Clinton would be like, okay, yes, I will put my schedule exactly to how Joe Biden wants it to be. Then again, I could also see, hey, he's the current president. I respect the office. I'll do what he wants too. So I don't know what the norm is for that. But it's definitely interesting. I never thought about it from that aspect. It's a good point. It's a very good point. The final thing that President Trump decided to do was he rounded out his night in Florida commentating on a boxing event that featured 65-year-old Evander Holyfield taking on Vitor Belfort, and Tito Ortiz took on Anderson Silva. I mean, luckily he got the 9/11 stuff out of the way before he did that. Because could you imagine the outrage if that's all he did that day? But I mean, and I can laugh about it because I think it's funny. But I mean, there are people out there criticizing him for choosing to take that booking, so to speak, that night. Do you see any issue with that?
I do not, because if you're going to criticize him for taking the booking, then you have to criticize those companies for even putting on the event. You have to criticize all of your game days that
very true
occurred on that same. So why is it all right for all these colleges around the world or around the U.S. to host a game with commentators and TV personnel and all of that, but you're going to grab that Donald Trump?
Absolutely. And I mean, Trump knows he's a lightning rod too. So, I mean, it's obvious it comes with the territory, just like any other president, more so with Trump. He's a lightning rod, so they're going to grab onto anything. I think this one's more silly than anything because, I mean, in case you can't tell, I'm laughing about it. But no, my only gripe is it feels like he set himself apart. And, of course, the speech. I think the speech he took – once again, that speech made on 9/12, I'm cool with. Yeah, go ahead. You're setting yourself up for a political battle. Go for it. But that speech on 9/11, I feel like tact would have told him to leave it at leave it at, hey, today's about 9/11, so on and so forth. It's not about me. It's not about yada, yada, yada. But, it is what it is. And that kind of leads us into our next topic. We don't have a video on this one, but CNN recently did a poll. Less than half of college-educated Republicans believe Donald Trump should lead the Republican Party. And when I say less than half, that headline is a little misleading. It's 51-49.
It's very 51-49, and it's based on whichever group of people they decided to question.
Very true. Very true. And I mean, you'd think a Republican Party would be a Republican Party, but
and for those of you that don't know, polls I do not get behind at all, because that is a small percentage of people that are even questioned. And facts can be skewed to say whatever you really want it to say.
Right. And once again, well within the margin of error. I think the margin of error on this poll was 2.8%, plus or minus. So, it could have been either way, honestly.
Right.
Like the headline was quite misleading. The reason why this is important to me, though, is because 2020, what happened with that? He lost a lot of suburban Republican college-educated vote to Joe Biden. Joe Biden made quite a bit of inroads during the 2020 election, and that's why this kind of weighs important to me. It really is what this 538 website is saying led to the election of Joe Biden. So if you're in the Trump camp, number one, are you paying attention to this, and you're going to start trying to speak a little bit nicer to the college-educated crowd, or?
And you gotta ask, what are they considered college-educated crowd? I mean, if you're a freshman,
It doesn't say college graduated. I'll say that
exactly.
much.
If this is your freshman year and you just started, we know there's a lot of young people that are anti-Trump.
Very good point. Very good point. And a lot of college campuses tend to be liberal. A lot of Republicans who were Republicans because their parents supported it and they, carry over their family's values, go to college and they're exposed to the more liberal nature of the world and they choose to move away from that. So that's also something to keep your mind on.
And it's not always that. I mean, you look at your campuses that are typically Republican and you look at your campuses that are typically Democrat. Where were they whenever they asked these people?
That's a very good point. I believe the only information we have is Newsweek reached out to the, let me see here. Where are those numbers?
Because I guarantee you, 100 people in Texas are going to say something different on a Texas campus than they would on a California campus.
That's true. That's true. The CNN poll actually surveyed 2,119 adults from August 3rd to September 7th. And of course, like I said earlier, the margin of error was plus or minus 2.8 points. Again, basically, could call it even, especially if you say 3 points.
How many people?
2,119. So, I mean, also a very small sample size.
Currently.
Do what now?
How many people are in college currently?
It didn't break it down that far. That's interesting to me. That's another good, interesting point. I will say this, though. The Republican Party does seem fractured as far as whether they want Trump's leadership. Right now, the study also asked Republicans what values are most important. 86% said believing the federal government should have less power, and 85% said conservative policy positions are important.
So they believe the government should have less power, but they still want to push the mask mandate that's coming on by the government.
Very true. Very true. 51% of the respondents to this CNN poll said they believe Republicans would have a better chance of winning with Trump, while 49% said they would have less or better chance with somebody else. Again, 2,100 people isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it is kind of speaking to a fractured party.
Right.
Do you believe the party is as fractured as the media wants us to believe, or do you think they're under the Trump umbrella for the most part?
I think it is fractured. I think it's pretty fractured.
Okay.
There are young people that are coming up that don't want Trump there. There are some older people that are there that don't want Trump there, and you've got a small amount that are holding on to Trump's ideas.
So, where are you looking? You specifically, as a Trump voter in 2020, are you wiping the slate clean in 2024 and going to look at the candidates fresh, or are you going in a Trump supporter to 2024, assuming he runs?
I'm going in a Trump supporter, but I'm definitely going to see who all is there.
Okay, so you're allowing yourself to be open to potentially change your support.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I think, once again, even that makes me happy. Even there, that makes me very happy that a lot of people, and I think you said this on our last episode, a lot of people don't understand that not necessarily Trump, Colt 45, as we called them, Colt 45 doesn't necessarily follow Trump to death. They will, they will disagree with Trump. So it's definitely, even though we call him a cult, it's definitely not a cult. They're not willing to follow Trump off a damn bridge, basically.
Right. There are things that Trump did in his first presidency that I was behind. There are things that he did that I think he could have done better.
Absolutely.
Looking at it right now, he is the only one that I know for a fact is running.
Right.
And of course, And
well, I mean, we don't know
think
that for a fact. Honestly, he hasn't fully committed to anything yet.
True. I think he had mentioned it once. So that I don't think Biden is the man to lead anything, let alone the country.
I mean, 7 months in at this point, I'll tell you, I don't regret not voting not voting for Trump. I don't regret that part. I regret not voting third party because Joe hasn't done anything that moved that I wanted to see move the needle. And a lot of people were telling me, Sean, a lot of people, especially on this podcast, Tara, Tropic Thunder, everybody was telling us, hey, temper your expectations. He's not gonna be exactly what you think he's gonna be.
Right.
And he hasn't lived up to even a quarter of what I expected him to do. Mind you, he's really gotten sidetracked with this COVID thing. And we're almost a year into his presidency, so
right.
He'll be able to correct that.
I'm curious if he has lived up to the expectations of the overwhelming number that voted for him.
The 84 million, I believe, that voted for him.
If you look at it, if half of those people voted third party, Trump was the president.
Matthew says, do you think Trump will run in 2024? Absolutely. If you didn't hear our that video from Donald Trump earlier that we played, that was a campaign ad.
Yes,
if I've ever seen one, it was just missing, I'm Donald Trump and I approve this message. That was the only thing it was missing. He even said, we will make America great again. I mean, come on now. It's one of those, like, at the end of the movie where it's like, oh, I see where they left it open.
That was the after credit scene right there.
Exactly. But here we go. Okay, California governor, last topic, by the way, before our American Idiot of the Week. California Governor Gavin Newsom is in the political fight for his life right now in a California recall, and we have a story from Good Morning America on this.
Up on Tuesday, Californians will vote on whether to remove Governor Gavin Newsom from office. Newsom has been raising millions and bringing in Democrat heavy hitters, including President Biden, tomorrow to support him. ABC's Zareen Shah spoke exclusively to Newsom's top challenger out on the campaign trail.
With just days left before Californians decide whether they keep current Governor Gavin Newsom, the governor and his main opponent, radio host Larry Elder, throwing their hardest punches in their fight for the Golden State.
The contrast and the stakes could not be higher. This election is a matter of life and death. Public health is on the ballot.
Elder telling ABC News in a rare sit-down when it comes to COVID, he'll focus on individual freedoms.
Well, one of the first things I'm going to do is repeal the requirement for state workers that they have to be tested once a week and they have to wear masks at work. I don't think the science supports that.
The special recall election was triggered largely because voters were unhappy with Newsom's handling of the pandemic, but a boost from national heavy hitters,
your vote could be the difference,
and better COVID rates have polls in his favor. Newsom telling ABC exclusively last week the state is seeing a comeback.
We have the second lowest case rate in America. We're actually moving in the right direction.
Newsom needs 50% of voters to reject the recall to keep his job. Otherwise, the leading opponent, right now Elder with a double-digit lead, will become governor.
Larry Elder's positions he's taking are extremely conservative on the right and unlikely to, have the kind of broad-based appeal that Schwarzenegger did.
Some of those views include fringe opinions, like this one from an appearance on the Candace Owens Show in 2019.
You could make an argument that the people that are owed reparations are not only just black people, but also the people whose, quote, property, close quote, was taken away after the end of the Civil War.
Newsom overnight tackling those comments.
When asked about that reparations bill, Larry Elder went so far as to say, well, if we're going to debate reparations, why aren't we considering paying reparations to slave owners? He said their property was taken away. And you can't make that stuff up.
Elder deflecting when asked about his position.
Would love for you to clarify your statements about slave owners getting reparations.
I would love for you to talk about why I'm running for office. I'm not running for office because of slavery. I'm running.
So I'd love for you to talk about.
You want to talk about everything I've ever said? How about what I said about the election? The election is occurring because people are unhappy with how California is being governed.
Elder also avoided answering whether he would accept the election results. I asked him about this several times. He is convinced it will not be an issue because he says enough people will show up to recall Newsom. Newsom's team says they are prepared for potential lawsuits. Dan?
Contentious interview, Zuri, and thank you very much.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks.
So, Manny, I'll be honest, a quick look, and I'll share
myself in the foot.
I'll share my screen here. A quick look at the numbers. 57.5%. This is 538, by the way. 57.5% currently to keep Governor Newsom. 40.8% to remove. A margin of plus 16.6%. I'll tell you, this was gaining a lot of momentum.
Yes, it was.
The Republicans in the state of California are the reason why Governor Newsom will remain governor of that state. Am I wrong? This Larry Elder gentleman, I'm sorry, you don't want to speak about that, but bro, you said that.
Right.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he straight cocked the gun and pointed at his foot.
You want to talk about any president. Good Lord, Trump wouldn't have stepped in that pile of shit. This man, we have a black man on television saying that white slave owners should get reparations.
I think what he was trying to do was provide a reason why he didn't feel
reparations were justified.
Reparations were justified for anyone.
Right.
And yeah, he definitely chose some bad wording there. And his chances, I think, were gone at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think about Governor Newsom, though? Do you support him remaining? Obviously, we've seen quite a few Democratic governors that were popular at one point getting in a lot of trouble. Cuomo, we just saw, by the way, Cuomo is a complete douchebag. I don't know if you saw this, but he took his remaining re-election campaign funds and actually are using them to attack his lieutenant governor who replaced him. Same party, by the way.
Wow. No, I did not see that.
What a piece of shit.
No doubt.
But what's your thoughts on these Democratic governors kind of falling out of favorability? You never would have gotten a guy like Larry Elders elected. Let's be honest, in the state of California, you're going to need somebody like Schwarzenegger, like they mentioned earlier, who has kind of the moderate views to even think about electability in California, as liberal as what they are. But what's your thoughts on Governor Newsom possibly being recalled?
I think the issue that the people have is his handling of the COVID. If that's the only thing that they're pointing to, I don't understand it. It's not like there's a roadmap to look
Especially
at
if
on
something
how to
nobody's
handle
ever
this
seen.
stuff. Right. So there's not instructions to follow. They're trying to make things up as they go because we've never dealt with this before. So I don't understand why they're talking about the mismanagement, because it's not just the governor that does things. You have senators, you have all kinds of people that give their input in meetings and stuff like that. While people will say it's ultimately the governor who makes the decisions, the governor makes decisions based on the information that is brought to him by these people.
Right, which is a lot of what people forget about the president as well, honestly.
Right. So to try to get rid of someone that you voted in because you don't think they're handling one situation of an entire state, I think is a little bit backwards.
Yeah.
You voted him in because you thought he was the best person for the job. If he's not doing the job, a re-election comes up in what, 3 more years?
Something like that, yeah.
It's every
4.
Every 2 years. Is it 4 years?
It's every 4 for the governor. I don't know whether he is a midterm or a presidential year.
Right. So that's the way I look at it. You hired somebody in, give them a chance to do their job.
Absolutely.
They tried it one way. Apparently, it wasn't working. Your numbers were going the wrong direction. And it sounds like he's in the process of turning that around.
Absolutely. And I mean, they pointed it out, the numbers are starting to go down, so on and so forth, whereas a lot of the country is now seeing that cases are going up, whether that be because of sporting events or what have you and stuff that we couldn't really affect, but a lot of the countries or a lot of the states in this country are seeing them go up. California currently seeing a decrease. So I definitely think Governor Newsom survives, but it'll be something to watch, a little palate cleanser, so to speak, for our midterm elections coming up next year, right about this time. Okay, let's get into our American Idiot of the Week before we get out of here. My American Idiot of the Week this week, you're going to love this one. Probably the most often over the last 7 months, American Idiot of the Week, Joe Biden. Joe, this week you said that you were going to force private-owned businesses to either force their employees to get a vaccine or force them to take weekly tests to clear themselves from COVID. I believe this is unacceptable and a far overreach of the government. Whether I agree that they should get a vaccine or not, it is unacceptable for a federal government to walk into anybody with 100 employees. 100 employees, that's still considered a small business unless I'm mistaken. So you're talking about not only attacking large and medium, you're not even talking about attacking Walmart. You're talking about attacking the local thrift store down the road. Hey, Joe, number one, this could be a political nightmare for you because you are attacking small businesses and you could be giving the Republicans another key to victory. You're far overreaching your power as the president of the United States. Manny?
Well, I'm going to keep it right there. My American Idiot of the Week is Mr. Biden for his simple sentence telling the American people who hinge their entire life on the freedoms afforded to us by the Constitution of the United States that this decision was not about our freedoms or our personal choice. That is what every American lives for, is their freedoms and their personal choice. That is what this government was founded on.
Well, and see, what's interesting to me is most presidents, when they see that there is a stark divide in the country, there's a stark divide between the people who, get vaccinated and don't get vaccinated. The people who are vaccinated are now blaming the unvaccinated for this stark increase in death. Believe what you want.
Everybody got a vaccination for COVID-19, then the people that got the vaccination for the Delta variant would start blaming the ones that didn't get it for the Delta variant. At what point do we stop blaming the people? Oh, well, you didn't get it for this new.
In 6 months, we're going to be blaming the people that didn't go get the boosters. I mean, let's be honest. But, most presidents would probably be like, hey, let's take a nicer tone. This isn't how we're going to get our point across. We're not going to force these people to get this vaccine by being mean to them. No, Joe says, you know what? Y'all killing some Americans. I don't care about your freedoms. You need to go get the shot.
Yeah, go get the shot, or I'm going to do away with your job and you will be in the poorhouse because you won't be able to get unemployment. I guarantee you.
Oh yeah, no, they've already figured that out.
So, yeah, I mean, you are really hurting a lot of people who has done nothing other than exercise their freedom and personal choice to not get a vaccine that it appears is not necessarily needed.
Not to mention, let's be honest, if the vaccination rate of the entire country is 50% currently, around 50%, you're telling your voters that you're going to put them out of a job.
Right.
That's not smart. That is not smart at all. Well, Manny, that's pretty much everything. You got anything before we get out of here?
No.
Right on. Well, we will see you next Monday night for more American Idiots. For the Manic Hispanic, I am Money Mike. Good night, everybody.